All right. Happy Thanksgiving to anybody who celebrates it. Originally, I was kind of hoping that I could find the new sets of Series 6 bots so that maybe I could review that new turkey guy for Thanksgiving, but alas, it did not end up happening. So here is Legacy Skullgrin for no Thanksgiving related reason, but I got him recently and he's pretty fun. But yeah, this is a figure that I was anticipating for quite a while because I really like the new Legacy versions of these like updated Pretender designs where they're really, their vehicle mode is based on the vehicle mode of their like inner robot, and then the robot mode is based on the outer shell. I just think it's a really fun concept and a neat new way to do Pretenders. And Skullgrin is one of my favorite Pretender designs, so it's definitely really cool to get a new Skullgrin, and really cool to see them actually start to do bigger size classes with these guys, since both Bombers and Iguanus, the previous ones that we got, were both core classes. And those are really fun figures, but it is cool to see them venturing into the larger size classes with this idea. And yeah, here we have Skullgrin in his tank mode. Now, he comes with, he comes with these as accessories, like the guns come off the turret, and the whole turret actually comes off for whatever reason too, even though like you can't really do much with it since it's just like a piece with a bunch of like peg holes. So I guess you could use it with like other weapons as like a kind of, support piece to actually combine a bunch of other weapons, but it's a little strange that comes off. But it comes with that, and then he also comes with his two sword guns here. And these are done in kind of like a softer, sort of like rubberier plastic. I think it's PVC. And, I've seen some people saying like, oh, well, they had to do them that way for safety reasons. And no, they didn't. Like, these are not much sharper than the guns here. I think that the reason that they did these in that material is because they did have some other pieces on this guy in robot mode that did have to be in that material, and they just needed more stuff to put on that particular sprue. So these weapons, since they've got, the white, which is what the same color as all the other parts are that use that plastic, ended up being, that plastic. And it's not terrible. It's not like the super flimsy floppy stuff. It feels okay. It just does make it a little bit hard to peg it into some spots. Like for vehicle mode, where you're supposed to store these, is plugging these onto the side here. And as you can see, like it's kind of started to like get some ugly coloration from like the paint on the inside of this peg hole. So, and like it's loosened up since I first gotten it, but the first few times I did this, it had this like horrible squeaking sound when attaching these, which made me worried that it might just like grab onto the peg and then like twist it off and then just like tear it off the joint. So far it seems to be okay. It's definitely loosened up a bit, thankfully, but that was something I was not a huge fan of. And then there's also a little tab on the side here to peg the swords on there. And yeah, I mean, normally I don't really like just pegging weapons onto the side of vehicle modes, or like without them like storing properly, but this is actually a lot more reminiscent of how the original Skullgrin design was. It's funny because the G1 toy itself kind of just like folded in half and then stuck the weapons on the side, so it wasn't really that great in alt mode. But the sort of like drawings, like the comic drawings and like the character design artwork of Skullgrin, I think made the vehicle mode look a lot cooler. And this design is really much more based on like those, those renditions of it rather than the actual physical toy. And yeah, I think it works really well. I mean, I think that the tank mode doesn't actually really feel complete without these on the side there, especially since it has like this big hollow gap in the middle, which it helps hide. But yeah, no, I think it works pretty well. It's a weird alt mode because it's got like, is it a hover tank? It's got treads, but only at the very back. So like, I don't know how it's actually supposed to move. I don't know. I like imagining it as a hover tank, but then I'm not totally sure why it has the treads at all. But again, that's sort of, par for the course for, like basing it on the original Skullgrin design. But yeah. No, I really like the vehicle mode. The cannon here, because it's just pegged in, can rotate, and then each of these can rotate up and down on that. Now, because they're just pegged in, you can see it has this like angled section in the back here, so it kind of fits to the contour of this little piece, so it has like that angled section all the way around. But if you wanted to get like a little bit more range upward than just this, you could flip those around and peg them on the other way so that the angled piece faces down, which means that it can angle all the way up. You know, I think it looks fine either way. I generally prefer it the way it's supposed to be, and I think it has enough range as it is, but that is an option. And yeah, I would say the one thing that's kind of annoying, and this is really more of an issue, honestly, in robot mode, is that, like, the peg tolerances for where this piece attaches and where these pieces attach to the middle piece is a little bit looser than I'd like it to be. Like, none of them, like, fall off or anything. Like, they stay perfectly fine on there, but there's, like, just a little bit too much smoothness on them, so that when this ends up on his back in robot mode, if you're actually like picking him up, it's really easy to just like move these around in ways that you're not wanting to, which sometimes then works them off the joints. So those could be a little bit tighter. That's like the one thing that makes it kind of annoying to handle him in robot mode, which I'll show off. But otherwise, I really like the tank mode. I think it looks pretty good here. Now for comparisons in this mode, just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom's Sideswipe for a standard size deluxe there. Here he is with the Generations Skullgrin from, yeah, I think it was just Generations. This was like before Thrilling 30. This is, you know, obviously very different takes on the tank mode here. This is just a retool of the Dark Mount / Straxus mold from Generations. And it's a pretty good toy, but it definitely doesn't really capture the sort of G1 design like this guy does. But yeah, that's what they look like together. And then last but not least, here he is with our other legacy pretenders with Bombburst and Iguanus here. And yeah, I think they look really cool together. I'm excited to see if we get more of these guys. Reportedly, if you're believing the leaks, we're supposed to be getting a Bludgeon, apparently, which would be really cool because he's another fan favorite. But yeah, as for now, I think these three look really nice together. And yeah, that's pretty much it for vehicle mode. It's weird, and I could understand why it wouldn't be some people's cup of tea, but I like it for what it is. But yeah, for a transformation, first thing you want to do is just take off the swords here, and we'll just put them off to the side. You can leave the turret on for the entire transformation, or you could take it off. It does make it a little easier if you take it off, just because like you're not having to deal with it bumping into stuff, but it ends up in the same place, so you can leave it on throughout the entire transformation, which I will. But yeah, then you just want to take the treads on the side here, untab them from what will be the arms, and then bring them down on these white armatures here. And then take these pieces, they're on these little like rotation joints, so you want to rotate them in and then tab them in so that this tab right here goes into this slot right here. No, sorry, this tab. I was like, that's not in the middle. How could that line up? But yeah, it's the one in the middle. Goes into that slot just like that. Then we can take the legs here, separate them, kind of unhinge them at the knee. They kind of double hinge up. So you get that locked into place, and then you can rotate down the foot and then take this piece and it'll just peg into the back of the leg there. Do that on both sides. Then you want to take the legs, rotate them down just like that, and then take the entire waist section and rotate it up on that separate joint. Then you want to, I mean, you can just rotate it past it, but just to show it off, you want to fold down the chest plate here. You want to take the arms, fold them down, they kind of tab into this section in the top here, then separate them from each other and rotate them out to the side. Then flip this whole piece around, and as you're flipping it around, you want to compress this armature here. You can see it's on a little slider, so you just want to slide it up like that, and then flip it around all the way so it tabs into the back there. Then you want to lift up his head, fold up the chest piece, flip out the hands, which can be kind of tricky sometimes, and then rotate the arms forward. And then on the back of his head, he's got two little rubber spikes. I mean, they're one piece, but it's two spikes. You just rotate that up and then take his main horns here, which are kind of playing peekaboo right now, and just rotate them out to the side. And there we have Skullgrin in his robot mode. And yeah, I think he looks really good. I love that they're actually like committing to the more monstrous features of the G1 Pretender designs. Like, you know, he actually has a full-on sort of like the full-on just demon skull head sculpt rather than some like smaller robot-y version of the kind of skull design like he did in the Generations version. And the head sculpt in particular, I think, is really successful. Like, just look at that. This is nice detail. This doesn't even look technological at all, which, you know, it's like, I don't know what his story is. If he's actually just a robot that turns into a guy wearing a skull mask, maybe you have to replace his head at some point or something. I don't know. But yeah, no, I like a lot of the details on here. I love the shoulder pads with little spikes there. And I love the sort of like, you know, belt design that's made up of the different segments of the leg. I think it looks really cool. The little, belt buckle there with the skull. Yeah, it turned out pretty nicely in my opinion. Now, he's got a couple weapon options. He's got the swords, and then he's also got the turret back here, which you can't actually have him hold the full-on turret as it is, because, you know, this piece has the hole and the back actually has the peg, but you can take these pieces off. And just with these 4 pieces alone, you get like a surprising number of really good looking options with this guy's sort of like weapon, you know, choices. Like you can do swords, guns, sword guns, double swords, double guns, double sword guns, double sword gun guns, double swords with underslung guns, double guns with underslung swords, swords on top of guns, guns shooting swords. Okay, maybe not that last one, but the the rest of those options I think look really cool, and it's just really cool amount of like versatility in the actual weapon designs. Like I had a lot of fun just picking up this guy and putting the weapons in different orientations, and like I said, for the most part, I think that they all look pretty good. Obviously, you can, you know, make it look bad, but it's got a good number of options, and he just seems like a fun sort of like, you know, gladiatorial character with a lot of different weapons. Now, in terms of storage, obviously you can just leave the guns on the back here, sort of how they're intended to be, how they are for tank mode. And for the swords, there's a few different options. I mean, what I generally do with them is I peg them on backwards because, you know, like the guns have these holes on the side here as well. So I just leave them off the backpack like that. So that's really nice. You know, the thing that I really like about tank transformers is, you know, it doesn't typically have this typical issue that I usually have with Transformers where it's like, oh, it'll turn into a car and it'll come with a cool looking gun, but the only way to store that gun in alt mode is just peg it on top of the car. Whereas with a tank, they usually have, you know, like the turret guns kind of built into the alt mode, so he just automatically has integrated weapon storage. And then with him, since he's got, you know, the Cybertronian tank with like the weird side pieces, the swords also integrate pretty well into the alt mode. So yeah, definitely some good options there. Now, in terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint here and it can rotate around. It actually gets a really good range up as well. Like you can just like have him look straight up, which I think is really cool just because of the way it's attached, which definitely helps him get like his chin around, you know, the different pieces here. I will say, like, it's too bad that these don't like click into place or something, because it is kind of easy to just like make him peekaboo by accident. And also weirdly, like I find that like in its resting position, like if I want to bring his head to the middle, it always kind of like thoops to one section, which is just slightly off center, which kind of annoys me. I'm sure I could take it off the ball joint and like there's probably just like a tiny piece of like flash or something stuck in there that's making that happen, but not too big a deal. The shoulders here can rotate around just like that and then swivel out to the side, only about that much before the shoulder pads kind of, you know, bump in. Also for transformation, because of the way they fold in, they get like a very slight amount of like backwards butterfly tilt, like really not a whole lot, but I don't know, it could be kind of useful in some poses, just not to a great degree. The elbows here, he's got bicep rotations. He's got pretty deep elbow bends, not, you know, like the full elbow bends, but like that, it works pretty well. His wrists can bend in for transformation, which, you know, normally wouldn't really matter. But for a guy with swords, I think that is actually a pretty useful joint, because he can actually, you know, hold his swords down at an angle like that rather than just like straight up 90 degrees with his arm. So that I definitely appreciate. He's got a waist cut here, which, you know, gets the full 360. I'm just going to take you can see what I'm saying, right? When I'm messing around with this guy, the backpack is just like moving around. And I feel like obviously, you know, you need all those pieces to have joints there, but if they were a bit tighter, it wouldn't have that, you know, that issue quite as much. But yeah, with the legs here, at first, I thought that they only went out about that far, because they kind of have like a natural stopping point, because some of the, so like obviously the horns and like the back horns here, and then all the little spiky bits are the same plastic as the swords here. So, which means that they do have a tendency to kind of stick a little bit. So like at first I was like, oh, his legs only go out that much. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And then I just pulled it, and then if it just snaps, you know, then it works just fine. Just like each time you pick them up, you gotta let it, you know, move a little bit. And then I thought, okay, they only go to there, which is fine. But actually, these little pieces on this leg, it does it just fine. If you rotate it up, oh, yeah, now that I'm saying that, there's like a little ridge right here on the waist piece, which is impossible to show off. Yeah, this little white ridge right here that kind of bumps into the rubber piece. So if you push this down, the rubber piece can actually go underneath that and bring the leg out all the way to the side. And on this side in particular, it almost always gets stuck. So you can see, like, I don't know if you can see that, but it is actually like lifting that piece off the leg a little bit, which is not good for it. So if you wanted to, you want his legs to go all the way out, just make sure to actually push in that piece, and then you can give him the full splits. Again, I don't know if he necessarily needs that anyway. Like, I think it's fine if his legs only went out to there, but that is something to be aware of, because if you just like try to force it, it could snap those pieces off. But yeah, he's got a thigh rotation, 90 degrees of bend at the knee, and ankle tilt out to the side. So yeah, pretty decent articulation. I mean, I guess if you bring the ankle out, you can also tilt it in slightly backwards, where you can't when it's like really compressed in here. But yeah, I don't know if that's altogether all that useful. Oh, I forgot a step of transformation. This is the most important one. On the turret here, you got to take this little piece and fold it down. So he's got his little demon tail. Very, very important there. But yeah, no, I think he looks really good in terms of size comparisons in this mode. Here he is with side swipes. So you can see he's pretty much a you know, an average size deluxe. Obviously, he gets a little bit of height just from his big head there. It would be nice to see this guy maybe as like kind of bigger, since he's really supposed to be more monstrous, but you know, I think it still works relatively well. Here he is again with our pretender guys, with Iguanus and Bludgeon and Bomb Burst, just so you can see what they look like together. Again, you know, obviously, you know, 3 of them are from Legacy, and then Bludgeon is an older toy, and apparently we're going to be getting a new Bludgeon. But yeah, I think they look really cool together as just like a little unit of reimagined Pretender designs. And then last but not least, here he is with the Generations Skullgrin, and also the Power of the Primes little Prime Armor Skullgrin, just so you can see what they all look like together. I never thought that Skullgrin would be a character that I would have 3 different versions of, but here they are. And yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely the best one. It's just like the nice sort of updated design. If you wanted to, you could have him actually hold like the weapon mode of of the Power of the Primes Skullgrin, so he's using himself as a weapon, and that looks kind of cool. I don't know how that makes sense for him to be holding a smaller version of himself as a weapon, but you could do that. And then I guess we might as well show him off with the inner robot as well, since the inner robot looks a lot more like the inner robot of the G1 toy. You can see very different design choices there. Here, you could have him be the inner robot for him as the outer shell, even though the size is not really quite right, but still neat things that you could do. But yeah, overall, I like this figure a lot. I'd say my main issue with him, really, my main lasting issue, is just that these pegs are not tight enough, so it's kind of annoying to handle him. Like, if you take it off, I feel like most of the joints feel pretty good in the way that they move around, as long as you know how they work. Whereas if you're holding him with the backpack on there, it's just swords or no swords. These just tend to bump out of the way, which is a little bit annoying. The rubbery plastic, I think is not ideal, but I think it's manageable. It doesn't feel too bad. And I also find sometimes that this back panel doesn't quite want to stay tabbed in place, but mostly the other joints kind of hold it in place anyway, so it's not really that big of an issue. But yeah, other than that, I think that he's a winner. Probably my favorite of the deluxes in Wave 3. Yeah, I just think he's a really, really cool design, and I'm glad that he turned out all right. But yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Deluxe Class Skullgrin. Happy Thanksgiving.